Dementors. The mere mention of them sends a chill down any witch or wizard's spine. These wraith-like creatures, infamous for feeding on human happiness, are feared across the wizarding world. But here's a thought both terrifying and intriguing. Could a Dementor be taught to feel emotion? Could something so inherently void of joy learn to experience it? At first glance, the answer seems obvious. After all, a Dementor isn't a person, isn't even a creature in the traditional sense, but a force, a manifestation of decay, despair, and darkness. And yet, the wizarding world has shown us time and time again that magic has its exceptions, its mysteries, and its contradictions. To begin unraveling this question, we must first examine what Dementors truly are. These beings are not born, but rather seem to emerge in places of extreme suffering. As Remus Lupin once described, they infest the darkest, filthiest places. They glory in decay and despair. The very air around them grows cold, suffocating the warmth of life itself. And most horrifyingly, they possess the ability to consume not just happiness, but the very soul of a person with their dreaded kiss. They are, in every sense, predators, drawn not by hunger in a physical sense, but by the irresistible lure of human misery. But is that all they are? Are they truly mindless, or is there more lurking beneath their hooded voice? It's worth considering that Dementors possess a certain intelligence. They can communicate, follow orders, and even form alliances. The Ministry of Magic employed them as guards of Azkaban for centuries, despite the ethical implications. Why? Because they could be directed. They understood their role and acted accordingly. They could sense fear, differentiate between prey, and, most notably, their presence could be manipulated. Albus Dumbledore refused to allow Dementors onto Hogwarts grounds, not merely because of their horror, but because he understood their nature, how they respond to their environment, how their instincts drive them. And therein lies the key to our question. If Dementors can be controlled, influenced by external forces, is it possible they could be influenced in other ways? Could they be taught? Could they somehow be changed? But before we answer that, we must explore something deeper, the very nature of emotions themselves. If a Dementor feeds on happiness, does it understand it? Does it, in some twisted way, crave it? A predator understands its prey on an instinctual level. A werewolf does not merely kill. It is drawn to the scent, the heartbeat, the warmth of life. A Dementor then must have some awareness of the emotions it consumes. But awareness does not mean experience. A person who has never felt joy cannot truly comprehend it. A Dementor born of darkness has never known light. And if it has never known, can it ever learn? If we are to entertain the idea that a Dementor could learn to feel emotion, we must first ask, what would it take to change something so fundamentally woven into the fabric of despair? It is not merely a question of teaching, of exposure, or even of magical intervention. It is a question of whether a being without a soul can ever truly grasp what it means to have one. Consider this. Creatures of the wizarding world are often shaped by their nature, but nature is not always destiny. House elves, despite centuries of servitude, have demonstrated free will. Goblins, long embittered by their treatment, have shown loyalty when met with genuine respect. Even giants, creatures of brute force, have been capable of kindness in the right circumstances. The difference, however, is that all of these beings have something Dementors do not: an inherent emotional spectrum, however suppressed it may be. Dementors, by contrast, seem to be the living embodiment of an absence, a void where emotion should be. Teaching them to feel would not be like teaching a creature a new way of thinking. It would be like teaching darkness how to produce light. Still, we must not forget that magic by its very nature defies absolutes. If a Dementor could be influenced, what might that influence be? The Patronus charm is the only known defense against Dementors, a force conjured from pure, concentrated positive emotion. To cast it, one must recall their happiest memory, filling their magic with joy so tangible that it takes physical form. It does not destroy Dementors, but repels them, driving them away as though joy itself is unbearable to them. But why? Is it because they fear it, or because they do not understand it? And if they do not understand, could exposure to such magic over time change them in some fundamental way? We have seen magic transform creatures before. The werewolf cure remains elusive, but wolfsbane potion allows a werewolf to maintain their human mind. The Veela's fiery temperament can be tamed by love. Even the darkest of curses, given the right conditions, can be undone. So what of Dementors? Could they, with enough exposure to positive energy, begin to respond to it differently? Could a Dementor that lingered too long in the presence of happiness begin to crave it in a new way, not as a predator, but as something longing for what it has never had? And yet, we return to the great paradox of Dementors. They do not speak, do not express, do not even possess a face beneath their hooded forms. If change were to occur, how would we recognize it? Would it be in their behavior, their actions? Would they hesitate before attacking, seek out something other than despair? And most chilling of all, if a Dementor ever did feel emotion, would it be capable of remorse for all it had done before? If a Dementor were to experience emotion, even in the faintest sense, it would force us to reconsider everything we know about them. Are they truly mindless creatures, or have we simply never given them the opportunity to be anything else? The Ministry of Magic viewed Dementors as tools, useful, terrifying, but ultimately controllable. Wizards did not seek to understand them, only to wield them. But what if that very control stunted the possibility of change? If Dementors were exposed only to suffering, only to fear, then perhaps they have never had the chance to be anything else. Imagine, for a moment, a Dementor left in an environment where it could not feed on misery. A place where joy was constant, where laughter and love surrounded it, unyielding. Would it wither away, unable to sustain itself? Or would it adapt? And if it did adapt, what would that mean? A creature of despair that could survive without consuming happiness would be an entirely new entity, one that defies everything we have believed about them for centuries. Some might argue that the question is irrelevant, that Dementors are not meant to feel, that their existence is not one to be altered, only avoided. But history has shown that even the darkest of creatures can surprise us. A basilisk is bred to kill, yet one once shed a tear for a fallen friend. A thestral, seen only by those who have witnessed death, is not a harbinger of doom, but a gentle, intelligent beast. Even ghosts, remnants of souls tethered to the world, are capable of longing, of regret, of love. So why not Dementors? Why must they remain the one force in the wizarding world that is utterly incapable of change? Of course, this is not to say that redemption is possible for all things. Some magic is inherently dark, its roots too twisted to be undone. The creation of Horcruxes, the mark of a truly fractured soul, is not something that can be reversed. The Dementor's kiss, once performed, is final, an act so devoid of humanity that it leaves only an empty shell behind. If Dementors were ever capable of feeling, then perhaps the greatest horror of all is that they may have lost that ability long ago, drained away with every soul they consumed. And yet, we are left with one final question, the most unsettling of all. If a Dementor could be taught to feel, would it still be a Dementor? Or would it become something else entirely? Something the wizarding world has never seen before. Perhaps, in the end, the true question is not whether Dementors can change, but whether wizards would ever allow them the chance. If we entertain the possibility that Dementors could be changed, whether by exposure, magic, or something far more elusive, we must also ask, would that be a good thing? The wizarding world has long relied on Dementors as the ultimate deterrent, a terrifying force that ensures obedience through fear alone. But if they were capable of feeling, of something beyond hunger, what would that mean for the balance of magic itself? A world where Dementors could be more than they are is a world that must reckon with its own morality, its treatment of creatures deemed irredeemable. Dumbledore, perhaps more than anyone, understood this dilemma. He rejected the use of Dementors at Hogwarts, not simply because they were dangerous, but because he saw them for what they truly were, creatures that reflected the worst of wizard-kind's failures. The Ministry did not seek to eliminate Dementors, nor to find alternatives to their existence. Instead, it harnessed them, let them fester in Azkaban, feeding off prisoners already lost to misery. The question of whether a Dementor could change is perhaps less about the Dementor itself and more about whether wizards would ever allow them to. It is worth considering that some forms of magic remain beyond our understanding. The Deathly Hallows, the deepest laws of time, the nature of love itself, all exist at the edges of what magic can explain. Perhaps Dementors, too, belong to that realm. Their existence an enigma too vast to be unraveled. But if change is possible, it would take more than mere spells or experiments. It would require something even rarer in the wizarding world: true compassion, a willingness to see beyond fear and into possibility. And yet, there is one last chilling thought to consider. If Dementors could change, if they could feel, then they could also suffer. They could remember all they had done, all the souls they had consumed, all the happiness they had devoured without ever understanding what it meant. And if that is the cost of teaching a Dementor to feel, then perhaps, in the end, the greatest mercy is leaving them exactly as they are. So, could a Dementor be taught to feel emotion? The answer, like so much in magic, remains shrouded in mystery. Perhaps they are incapable of change, forever bound to their nature as creatures of despair. Or perhaps the real tragedy is that they have simply never been given the chance. If they could feel, if they could learn, then they would no longer be what they are. They would be something new, something the wizarding world has never seen before. And that is a possibility as terrifying as it is extraordinary. In the end, Dementors are a reflection of the darkest aspects of wizard kind. Its fears, its cruelty, its willingness to wield terror as a weapon. Whether they are monsters by nature or by design, we may never know. But the question remains, if even the foulest creatures in existence had the potential to change, would we ever dare to let them? Or is it easier to believe that some things are simply beyond redemption? Perhaps the real magic does not lie in whether a Dementor can be taught to feel, but in whether we, as witches and wizards, would ever be willing to try.